everyone, and welcome! It's Sean and Ellie, and we're going to talk about some Doctor Who. Ellie, how are you, first of all? You disappeared off into the wild blue yonder. Are you feeling well, or are you back?
I am back. Feeling well. Getting there. Not quite 100% still, but better than I was last week.
Understandable. Yeah. Poor old Ellie was, how do I say this nicely, sick as a small hospital for the back end of last week, which I'm not sure if the universe said, Sean's back from his holidays. Kill Ellie.
Maybe a little bit, but it's fine. We're all good. Let's talk about Wild Blue Yonder. Make everybody feel better.
We did the ups and downs there on Saturday. Myself and Danny's thoughts are pretty much out there because myself and Danny, as we do, it was very much a joint script. But we haven't really heard, what did you think? So first of all, Isaac Newton, hottie or nottie?
Yes, I agree.
What did you think of? So one of the points I made. I like the episode. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. The tone changes.
Okay, so I think that tone change. I think the thing about the Isaac Newton scene in itself is it was funny. You know, it added that whole Mavity gag that then ran through the whole episode. It was funny. Was it very necessary? That was my kind of point. I mean, if you thought about, apart from the Mavity gag, if you took that scene out and just had the word gravity, it didn't really, to a point, add anything. So I think in terms of the tone shift from that scene to the rest of the episode, I will agree that I was kind of like, what happened? But you had issues with tone shifts later on in the story as well, didn't you? And I think once that scene had passed, I kind of was in the flow of it and I didn't mind the rest of it.
That is, and that's a fair point. But I kind of thought, yeah, it was a bit jarring. But basically, you made a very good point. So for all the lovely people watching this, how many times do you think people should watch this episode?
Okay, so, I mean, I was going to get to that point a little bit later with the kind of more wacky side of the whole episode, but I definitely think that this is an episode that benefits from at least a second viewing, if not a third, fourth, fifth. As everybody knows, I knew I wasn't going to be around to watch this episode, so I took every precaution I could. My notifications for Twitter were switched off. I'd muted all of our chats. I was like, I am not having this spoiled for me, and I just had to kind of sit there on the train twiddling my thumbs on the way home, like not looking at anything. And when I got home, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I've got to watch the episode. When I'm ill, am quite prone to like fever dreams and stuff. And if you'd have told me in the morning that I hadn't actually watched the episode and that was a fever dream, I wouldn't have been surprised. It was very much, it was late at night. I didn't feel 100% well. I watched that episode and afterwards was like, huh? What did I just watch? What just happened? So then I watched it again the next day and I feel like I could process it a little bit more once I kind of knew what to expect.
I think to a person, everyone I've spoken to have said, second watch.
I definitely think you need to watch it. I think also the big thing as well is building up, I kept saying that this is the episode I was the most excited for and the most intrigued by because it was the one that we knew nothing about. And I think maybe there was a disadvantage to the fact that they'd hyped it up to be this big mystery. And so everyone had set their standards really high, wondering why it was such a secret and why they had kept everything hidden so much. And so going into it, as good as the episode was, it had been hyped so much that I think it felt a little bit underwhelming because there wasn't really any big surprises. And it did make you question why they kept it such a secret. And I know that Russell T Davies, there has been an article released that Russell T Davies has commented on this. And he, I think himself has admitted that in hindsight, maybe it didn't work quite out as he had planned. You know, to him, he just wanted to keep it a mystery because people like to be left in the dark. And it was the simpler of the episodes. But I think when you know that, then you're like, oh, well, let's make it seem much bigger than it is because actually it is the simple one, so we'll make it seem really mysterious. To an audience, you've got your hopes really high, and then an episode that could have been really, really great in your view seems a little tainted because it wasn't what it was hyped up to be.
So this is something I think we're going to come back to in like the summary of everything, because that is something that we need to discuss that. In a way, I'm glad Russell has addressed it, because I'm also going to get into the things that Russell addresses as we go on in this as well. So, right, big pin in that one for a moment.
Hang on. Carry on.
David Tennant and Catherine Tate. Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant in this.
I think the thing is, they also, a big mystery was like who was going to be in it, and they did release, kind of made a point of redacting the cast list, which again made you assume, oh wow, it's going to be filled with cameos. I think maybe after last week I was a little bit more convinced that we weren't going to have lots of people and it would just be them. What I didn't realize is it was just going to be them times 2. Everything else aside, those 2 actors carried that entire episode, and you can't dismiss that, especially playing those kind of creepy versions. I mean, I had like chills at some point, so I was like, this is really creeping me out and making me feel weird. But I also would say that both of them, absolutely brilliant. But we've made comments before about how series 4 really highlighted Catherine Tate's acting abilities and really shone a light on the fact that before then everyone just assumed she was a comedian and nobody really took her seriously in the more like dramatic elements of performance. And I think in particular this episode really again highlights Catherine Tate. I mean, not to say that David Tennant isn't highlighted as well, but David Tennant's had a very steady career, and you've seen him in lots of dramatic things past this as well, whereas I think Doctor Who is one of those things that really gives Catherine Tate a platform to showcase her abilities.
100%. I mean, because even now, even after years after, but even after season 4, she's known for her comedy.
And she's done comedy shows since then.
Yeah.
In terms of, and she's done, I don't know what year this was. It may have been around the same time as series 4, but I mean, they did Shakespeare together, Catherine Tate and...
Oh, they did? Yeah, that's right.
And David Tennant. But even that had, like, obviously there were serious parts of it, but even that was very comedic.
Yes.
If anyone has seen any clips of that, I would recommend. It was pretty entertaining. Anyway, point being, Catherine Tate in this episode, especially that scene, I mean, both of them, David Tennant also, but the scene where we had the mention of the flux and the Doctor not knowing where he's actually from. I mean, that whole scene, we got Tennant breaking down, which again, sorry, I'm just going to sideline. I really like that we are seeing elements of the Doctor here that really highlight the fact that he's not 10. I said this last week. You can see elements of 11 and 12 and 13 in there, and the growth of the character in kind of being more in touch with his emotions and actions and things that wouldn't necessarily be in character for 10, but very much are in character for other Doctors. And so you can see all of that combined in this. So even though it's 10's face, it very much still is a new version of the Doctor with all of those experiences. So that was great. But then obviously Catherine Tate going instantly from being very scared and very sad and very emotional to a puddle laughing on the floor, which was really creepy, but also just brilliant.
That was creepy. And it worked, because there's some bits of this that could have totally fallen on their face, and they didn't. Again, coming back to this is where the tone change didn't not work, or worked, as people say. Is that whole scene, the scene with Flux and the scene with, kind of, because the Doctor getting vulnerable is, even now 60 years in, it's still rare.
It is a rare thing.
It doesn't happen all the time, and it works with that balance. And so he gets vulnerable and she laughs at him, and
that was just a beautiful scene, that whole moment. And the thing is, as well, as you as an audience are questioning, like, quite early on, pretty much as soon as that first copy of the Doctor walked in, you were kind of like, I don't think that's the Doctor. Like, they didn't really make it too much of a mystery for too long. Yeah. But even so, didn't know that scene where you didn't know which was which. You really were struggling. Genuinely, I don't know. They don't know, but neither do I.
And
a lot of the time, the audience does know.
That scene, because that was the second Who Are They scene where they're talking about at that time I was just like, for a second I was like, maybe it is Donna. Like it was good in that way. I think it did the balance of who are they who's who, you know, who's real, who's not. I know, horror fan that you are, I'm sure you have seen the inspiration behind this episode, which is The Thing and Aliens. More so The Thing for these scenes.
Right, here's the thing, right? The thing. I haven't personally seen the film because horror films terrify me. Having said that, little plug here, go check out WhoCulture Horror. I have done the voiceover for so many articles that talk about The Thing that I feel like I've watched it without having actually watched it. So, despite the fact that I don't know the complete ins and outs, I got the general gist of it, and so I can very much see where the similarities are and where those connections come from. So I wasn't completely in the dark.
Well, that is, in fairness, like, that is cool, because The Thing is a fabulous movie, and if you are of age, because I'm not going to lie, it's scary. You know,
yeah, I don't consider myself of age to watch films like that. I'm too much of a baby.
Absolutely fair.
Even this episode made me jump a few times.
They're what like, even as she dissolves into the puddle, I was like, oh, that was, you know, unsettling. Now here's the thing. There are bits when the comparison to The Thing absolutely helps the episode, and there's bits where it really hurts the episode. And it is because The Thing is a masterclass in tension and paranoia. And when this episode works, it equals it. And when it then falls apart, giant stuck in corridor, it really falls apart. And then I know I'm so happy that practical effects were used for some of this episode, because this was a very CGI heavy episode. So the practical, obviously they're accented a little bit with computer, but then the giant arms, like, a bit silly.
Here's the thing, right? Because I'm glad you brought this up, because obviously last week we had such a deep conversation about how I love the practical effects. But I also have been very clear in pretty much any discussion we've had building up to this about how, to me, the hokiness is what makes Doctor Who sometimes. So, if I'm being honest, the iffy CGI of massive giants, actually, I had no issue with, because to me, I felt like I was 10 years old again, because it felt very much like something you would have seen back in 2008 or 2007. So I think I mentioned this maybe last week, or I have mentioned this at some point, that I do wonder whether personally I'm watching these episodes through kind of rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia. I'm enjoying it more than, say, a new viewer might watch that and go, what? But generally, I actually found the pristine CGI of that giant corridor more distracting than the iffy CGI characters. Because one of them, it's like almost shining a light on it in a jokey way, being like, oh, well, look at the dodgy CGI we've done here. And one of them was supposed to just be, believe you're in a corridor, but to me felt like they're just stood on a green screen. Yes. As believable and realistic as it was, you don't for a second believe that they're really there, because, I mean, maybe a child would, but as an adult, you're watching that and you're like, that's entirely green screen. So I found that more distracting.
That's the thing about the CGI, is that in such a CGI heavy episode as this was, some bits really worked, other bits really didn't. And I'm with you on that one. Like, the corridor, they're walking on a treadmill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I watched the episode of Unleashed afterwards, and there was a lot of focus on that CGI that they did. And while I think it is impressive that they were able to film it on the green screen and on the monitors already have the CGI background, so that to the director and everyone, they could see what it was going to look like. I mean, unpolished, but they could see the actual corridor itself on the monitor in real time. Now, that is really impressive. Yes. But I almost feel like it would have been better if you just built a really small set itself and then just tweaked it in post to add those extra elements, rather than, I don't know, I just feel like, you know, when you watch some of those kind of low budget, you know, the Sci-Fi Channel, and you watch those low budget sci-fi shows, and it's like, the story and everything about this is great, but I can tell that you filmed 90% of this on a green screen.
Yeah.
And I just feel like you could have just made a smaller set, a practical set, and then enhanced it in CGI later, rather than the entire thing being done that way.
I suppose to go to the point that you made, and a lot of people I've seen this make it online, is like, it's Doctor Who. I'm not here for, you know, the super $1 million budget.
I think that's it. Like I said, I mean, the dodgy CGI. I mean, it made me think of Miss Evangelista in Forest of the Dead, you know, when she's stuck in the Matrix and her face is all weird. That terrified me as a child. Yeah. I mean, even if you look at it now, if you were to watch it now as a first-time viewing as an adult, you'd be like, well, that looks like a Snapchat filter. But watching it as a child, that terrified me so much. I screamed like the child in the episode screamed when she saw it on her television screen. And that was very similar to some of the faces that were on these characters here, you know, the giant faces. Like it was, they were like Snapchat filters. But I like that. It's funny. It's Doctor Who. It's supposed to be silly.
You know what? And I totally agree. And there was one of the things. Now, I with the greatest of my love, I really didn't like the giant ones. But giant Donna chasing the hover car was
that was so creepy.
Yeah, that one was like, okay, all right. Yeah.
I kept thinking, maybe I draw the line at when they were like mushed together in the big ball. But the bit up before that, when the giant ones were chasing them down the corridor, that bit I found quite creepy. I think when they got a bit mushed, then I was like, you are staring at a green screen. I can almost see the wall where it's been edited in.
This episode for me excelled in its quieter moments. For pretty much for the reasons we've already discussed. But I mean, Tate and Tennant blew it out of the park this week. Someone commented, and they're right, that this movie, they are Indiana Jones. Or this episode, because they do not affect the plot in any way. If anything, doesn't them arriving actually cause the problem in the first place? Because by copying them, they work it out. And so if they'd never gone there in the first place, none of it would have happened. Yeah. Like, you know, kind of, the TARDIS dropped us off exactly where we needed to be.
Did it though? Because if you hadn't got there, then those weird creatures couldn't have copied you, and then you wouldn't have worked it out, and then they wouldn't have worked it out, and then the bomb would have gone off, and everyone would have been safe in the first place.
The harshest critique I will give this episode is that it's filler. But I've still only seen it the once.
So I think this is a point that I've seen a lot of people make, and I think I agree. If this was a 10-episode series, then this would have been a good episode within those 10 episodes. But it would have been the best one, but it would have been a good one within them. Because there's only 3, and it's for the 60th anniversary, it kind of felt a little bit underwhelming considering this is supposed to be 3 big celebration episodes. And in that regard, I feel like the Star Beast did a better job than this one. But also at the same time, this obviously is an episode that's trying to do something different. And we've seen episodes like that before. I mean, Midnight is a perfect example of that. And Midnight is an episode that some people really love because of how different it is, and some people aren't so keen on because of how different it is. And so I think this is a similar episode in that regard, but I do feel like it's a good episode, and in time, I think in the future, people will watch this episode and look back on it and go, gee, that was a really clever, mentally challenging episode. But with regards to it being the second of 3 anniversary specials, it just didn't kind of have that wow factor. It was, you know, there's a problem, they solve the problem, everyone's fine at the end.
This is... I obviously we need to see what will happen with the Giggle. We'll tie in a little bit. This is going to we'll discuss everything now in this section, but we'll need to see what happens with the Giggle. But I think these 3 episodes might better be thought of as a little side series or a little mini series, as opposed to a 60th anniversary celebration. Now, again, I might swallow my words next week. But right now, I've not felt anything particularly happy 60th birthday Doctor Who about. All
I thought is here's a celebration of Series 4 of Doctor Who, as opposed to here's a celebration of the last 60 years of Doctor Who.
Very much, yes.
And while that, to me, as someone who, you know, grew up watching Series 4 and has a very warm place in my heart, I absolutely, yes, it's great. But I'm also aware that there's audience members from the last 60 years who want an overall celebration and don't have the nostalgia that I have. And I think that's where they've kind of not quite got the balance right.
Balance, I think, is the best word there. Because if we look at the larger Whoniverse, the Tales of the TARDIS is actually gorgeous. Like, it's really nice. Now, I say this with I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, with the greatest of love and respect. Listen, I was born and bred on a later era of Doctor Who. Going back and watching some of the earlier ones for the first time is a bit difficult.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I stuck on Earthshock, which actually I have to say, Earthshock, it's a bloody solid story. It was made in the 80s, you know, and it feels like it.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Because Russell T Davies made a comment about how I think basically they threw Tales of the TARDIS together because he felt like they hadn't done enough for the 60th. And so I feel as though now that we're watching the 60th episodes and realise how Series 4 focused they actually are, that maybe he was kind of having that same thought of going, haven't done a lot of overall celebrating here.
Because I think as well, Tales of the TARDIS was only done quite recently, whereas
that's what I mean. I think he basically went, I haven't done enough, we need to do something else, and that's what Tales of the TARDIS ended up being. And because Tales of the TARDIS is so, you know, classic era focused, it does make you wonder whether he, in hindsight, was like, I feel like we needed to be a little bit more balanced with what we did with the 60th here.
I think so, and I think we will. This is something we'll only really get into the meat of probably either in our Giggle discussion video or, sorry Danny if this is going to cause grey hairs, possibly if we do an overall discussion video afterwards as well. You know, Doctor Who at 60, did we notice? So how long did it take you to stop crying at the end of this episode?
Oh my goodness, I honestly, as soon as he appeared on the screen, there were tears, and it just got more and more as he started speaking. And I love Wilf as a character. I love Bernard Cribbins. In our house, Right Said Fred plays on a daily basis. Bernard Cribbins. We love Bernard Cribbins in this house. When he died, it was a very sad and miserable day in this household. I mean, as it was in the rest of the world. And seeing him return there, we knew he was going to be in it, but I still wasn't ready for it.
Like, I think I was surprised that we got him in this episode.
Yeah, I think I thought he was going to be in the next one, but obviously we did learn that was the intention, but unfortunately he was not well enough to continue shooting. And so I'm glad that we still got what we did, because they could have very easily gone, oh, well, now it doesn't make sense, so we won't even use that bit. We'll change that ending. They could have very easily gone and done some reshoots, changed the ending, because if he couldn't be in the next episode and they couldn't explain why he suddenly wasn't there. But I'm glad that they left it in. It felt like the perfect send-off for the character, for the actor.
Yeah.
It broke my heart.
And also, I think, as well, without having to film a goodbye, I can only imagine what it was like when Russell was writing the script, being like, do I write a good night and God bless Bernard Cribbins, and, you know, who's going to make it through that scene?
Yeah.
And we now, through circumstance, don't have that. We're not going to have, this is the last time we're going to see, you know, or like where everyone knows this is the last time. This is now the beginning of, like, this is like scene one of the Giggle, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think also, what I like about that is Russell also mentioned in that post that, you know, he's referenced and mentioned and is fine and well in the next episode. Spoiler alert, sorry. But I think I like that because it means that although Bernard Cribbins is no longer with us, Wilf's story still lives on. We don't see an ending to Wilf. You know, in the Whoniverse, Wilf is still fine and happy, and he's living in that sheltered accommodation, and that's the last we'll know.
Yeah, and for all we know, sure, didn't they say? I think it's in the Sarah Jane Adventures, isn't it? Where Sarah references possibly episode 1. I might be wrong. Ian and Barbara. Now she doesn't say them by name, but of course, you know, yes, William Hill is still alive, but no, sorry, William Russell, excuse me.
I was thinking, what are you talking about? I'm just going to see if you notice.
William Russell's still alive, but, you know, Jacqueline Hill passed away quite a while ago, and yet they're still alive in the Whoniverse.
Yeah, I like that. Wilf will just remain for eternity within the Whoniverse, and I think that's the perfect way for his story to not end, to just continue. But I'm just very glad that we got to see that last scene of Wilf. I just love him. I just want to give him a big cuddle.
Just got like the Doctor does, and like, you know, he's still, you know, in that scene, the only thing that's changed is he's sitting down. That's it. Otherwise, he is the Wilf from End of Time.
This is the thing as well. You know, most people retire from their jobs at whatever age they retire, but most people at 93 are well and truly retired. And the fact that he came back to it, even though he kind of had semi-retired, and I think in Unleashed he made a point of saying he'd never retired. He doesn't like that word, but you know, essentially he had. And the fact that he came back at 93, he could remember his lines. He still had all that charisma and everything that is Wilf, despite, you know, being 93. It makes me sad.
Once you had watched the episode, I was like, right, grumble, because I was tired. I was being a grumpy guts, right? I was like, you know, Russell's tweeted out 0.68 seconds after the episode aired. Russell tweeted out this thing about Wilf, and I was like, oh, spoiler. Now that I have had a chance to sleep, I think it's both a beautiful tribute that they put out, but also I think it's also a kind of feeds into what Russell said about sort of accidentally not overhyping Wild Blue Yonder, but setting up expectations for Wild Blue Yonder by saying nothing. And so we thought we're going to get, you know, Avenger style, all the Doctors are going to walk in, and it wasn't that at all.
Yeah.
What he's done is, because this closes on Wilf, what's the natural thing you expect? Like, you expect
Wilf in the next one. Yeah. Exactly. And so they've addressed the fact that, unfortunately, this is all you're going to get of Wilf. He wasn't well enough to film anymore. But no, we wanted to include, like I said, they could have easily taken that out and not included him at all. But they didn't. They left. They
could have done that. It would have been a crime. But yes, they could
and I
have
think they definitely did the right thing by leaving it in and just saying, look, unfortunately, he won't be in any more of the episode. Well, he'll be referenced and mentioned. He's fine. But Bernard Cribbins was not well enough. But that does lead us very nicely into the Giggle next week. I personally feel as though this one is going to be the one that's going to feel the most 60th, if you get what I mean.
Yes, and I think I'm not sure if we've ever said this in a discussion video or like a hype video before. Maybe we did, but in hindsight, so what is it? The Toymaker's only the third Hartnell era villain to return. The Daleks, the Cybermen, and now the Toymaster. Toymaker.
Every time.
Every single time. This is what happens when you grow up in Ireland in the 90s. But so he's only the third Hartnell era villain to return, which means he is almost as old as the show itself. So as of recording, there is a video that is dropping in the next couple of days. I'm not sure, which is 10 things you need to know about the Toy Maker. So do keep an eye out for that, because there's so much room to do an anniversary with this episode. Now, whether I've stopped expecting other Doctors, right? If we get them right,
we've got Shooty.
Shooty in the trailer. I mean,
we know he's going to be in it.
Yeah.
Even if it's just at the end. But we were teased that he was more involved than we were led to believe. So I'm wondering how early on we're going to see him in this episode. But to be honest, I'm at the point where I don't want to speculate anymore, because that's what we've spent so much doing. And then we've been wrong and disappointed. So I'm just going to go into this episode really open-minded, now that I know what I know about the previous two episodes, and just take it as it is. But I do think that the inclusion of the Toymaker instantly makes it feel more like an anniversary special, because you've got such an iconic character from 60 years ago. And it just feels more epic. There's explosions, you've got Unit back. I think this is the thing as well, you know, you're back on Earth. And so you've got room for more people to be involved.
Yeah, like we know there was an image there came out, I think it was last night, of the Toymaker and Shirley. So I can't wait to see Ruth back.
I'm excited to see more of Ruth Madeley. I'm telling you who I'm really excited to see, Kate.
I know, and rightly so.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Kate. I know who you're looking forward to seeing.
I mean, everyone, but narrow it down.
A certain unit soldier, colonel.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I want to spin off already. I don't care.
Well, to be fair though, in the trailer, I just assumed that he was going to be just, he's an extra, he's a soldier that's in the background of the shot. But actually, I think that he's actually more important to the story than that first trailer led us to believe.
Works for me.
We've seen more. There've been more images released of him in the episode, and they're not going to release images of a random extra. So I think he's going to be more integral to Unit. So maybe we'll see more of him in the future. Who knows?
So basically, a quick summary of what we know about the Giggle. Obviously, we know Toymaker, we know Shooty. Don't know how much or whether it's opening scene of the episode, closing scene of the episode, or we've seen everyone get ready to sob, but we've seen the 14th Doctor start to glow. We know it's coming. So it's like, we know Mel is going to be in it because she was in the background.
Again, instantly feels more like a celebration. Yes. You've got characters.
Yeah, so we've got, and also, I mean, like, is Unit headquarters just like, we need an old companion? Chuck him in Unit. It's how we got Ace and Tegan in The Power of the Doctor. Now we've got Mel.
Yes.
What are you most excited for?
Do you know what? I really don't know. I think I'm excited. I'm excited to see Neil Patrick Harris in the role. I think I'm very excited to see what he brings. He just seems perfectly fit to play that part. And I'm actually quite excited. I've really enjoyed having David Tennant back. And if we had a whole new series of David Tennant and Catherine Tate, that would be fine by me. But I think I'm really excited to see Ncuti Gatwa. I'm really ready to see what he's going to bring to the role.
See, I still have Eric from Sex Education.
Well, so do I, but I'm
really excited.
He's great in that role.
Yeah.
But I think, overall, I'm very excited. I'm going to go in with a bit more of an open mind than I had done perhaps with the last two episodes now that I've learnt from those two. But yes.
Going blank slate.
Yeah, but we'll find out. We'll find out next week. What I will say though, before everybody leaves us, keep your attention for a second. Make sure that you check out Sean's Ups and Downs for World Blue Yonder. We'll have the Easter eggs coming out at some point this week as well. So keep your eyes peeled for those as well. If you missed all of our reviews and our discussions on the Star Beast, then you can also find those too.
Ellie, thank you so much. Lovely to see you again. Get well soon, because we have so much to cover.
Yes, we do.
You are awesome and wonderful. And everyone, keep things wibbly wobbly. Bye.
Bye-bye.